Imagine zooming on a pod race engine around Tatooine, followed by animatronic banthas. Over in the distance, you see the Death Star as an attraction with the one and only Darth Vader and Emperor attraction. That's right. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about what if Universal would have bought Star Wars instead of Disney.
So George Lucas back in the 80s was actually in talks to have the rights to Star Wars go to Universal Studios. So whenever he was making the films, before he ever started pitching, he actually pitched it to Universal Studios. They ended up passing on the ideas. That's inevitably where he went to 20th Century Fox and they picked up on the idea. But in another universe, he could have went to Universal Studios and they could have picked up the films instead of 20th Century Fox. He was also friends with Steven Spielberg, who, if you didn't know, is a big Universal Studios guy. So Jaws, Jurassic Park are all Universal Studios films. So history actually worked out a little bit different, where George Lucas actually ended up partnering with 20th Century Fox and the Disney theme parks to bring Star Tours back in the 80s of around $4 billion plus Disney stocks, and the future is here now. So Disney does own Star Wars, but what if Universal had picked it up? Let's picture that theme park for a second. So in my mind, I picture Universal Studios and Star Wars mashup. Imagine it's Star Wars right beside Jurassic Park, two of the biggest IPs in film history, side by side. So instead of Hogsmeade, we would have Tatooine. Over in the distance, instead of the Hogwarts Castle, you would have the Death Star, and you would have either a pod race or a speed racer bike where Hagrid's is now. The dining location would be a lot more like the cantina in the first Star Wars film. Over at Universal Studios Florida, we would actually have a different Star Wars land, maybe based off the prequels. So imagine either a Geonosis arena that you go into with full animatronics for Acklades and Reeks and other creatures from the prequel films and the Clone Wars animated series. And in this what if scenario of Universal having Star Wars instead of Disney, imagine the new Universal Epic Universe to have the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and how different the sequel trilogy would be as opposed to the one that we got in Galaxy's Edge. So I envision a lot darker of a tone in the theme parks. I imagine a lot more of the legacy characters throughout, like they did with the Harry Potter universe, and just a better overall experience for Star Wars instead of what we got with Disney. Now, some of the pros of this what if Universal had bought Star Wars instead of Disney would be that I believe that there would be darker tones to the theme parks, the movies, TV series, and everything else in between. So the way that they do their theme parks is they have a different of attractions than, say, like Disney does. Now, I love Rise of the Resistance at the existing Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but I imagine the attraction, the Death Star attraction, would be a lot more darker in tone with Darth Vader and the Emperor there as well. With some of the more legacy characters, there wouldn't be the expanded universe. Universal would probably just have left it at that and just kept making the films to what actually worked and what the box office actually wants to. I also think instead of building a lightsaber, they would have a lightsaber experience where you go throughout all of the Star Wars lands, the three that would be there, and you would actually use the Force with the lightsaber and have those different effects. I also see Universal using a lot more practical effects with animatronics and some of the bounty hunters as well, with the Dark Lords of the Sith and the Jedi as well. So I think it would be a lot more fleshed out than what Disney gave us, and would be a good mixture of rides and shows as well. So I fully anticipate if Universal had Star Wars that they would actually do a Star Wars show like they did at Epic Universe with the Entrainable Dragon and Les Cirque Arcanu with the Harry Potter land. So imagine it, you would have Harry Potter and Star Wars at the same location with Jurassic Park and some of the biggest IPs throughout history. So I think it would be a lot more fleshed out. Now, some of the pros of the land would be darker in tone, more unique experiences to use your collectibles. I also think it'd be a lot more affordable than what Disney has offered. I also think the attractions would be a good mix of dark rides, roller coasters, and family-friendly attractions too, like they have with the Wizarding World starting out now. Now, I'm not going to make one of these videos without telling you about some of the cons that I think Universal would run into with owning Star Wars, and that would be that I believe that Disney Star Wars actually does a better job at telling a story and time, even if it's a time in the Star Wars timeline that we don't like, which is in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, at an unknown planet. But I think they do a pretty good job with what they build out with the attraction and the narrative elements throughout that land and kind of bringing everything together. And I just don't think Universal would do as good of a job, because take Battle at the Ministry, for instance, at Epic Universe. Battle at the Ministry is a fantastic attraction. If you haven't rode it, I highly recommend it. But one of the big problems is they went back to the 90s with the Harry Potter and they didn't focus on the Fantastic Beasts films. So I believe that Disney does a better job with Star Wars as far as the narrative elements throughout the land as well. So in a world where if Universal had bought Star Wars instead of Disney, I do believe that the theme parks would look totally different. Even with existing Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, and different IPs, I don't believe we'd have as big of a focus on the Fast and the Furious franchise that we have right now. So sorry to the two fans of the Fast and Furious franchise at Universal. Probably wouldn't happen if Universal had Star Wars. Also, imagine it, you would have Transformers as well as Star Wars over at Universal Studios Florida, and that would make for a compelling story. So there you have it. There's my video of what if Universal had Star Wars instead of Disney. So let me know down in the comments what you think Universal would do better than Disney does with Star Wars. And if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. It does help grow DizWiz Dollars. I do Disney, Universal, and personal finance content as well. So it does help grow the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.